This story takes place on the western coast of Canada, off the shores of British Columbia, during the early morning hours of a day in July 2015. Eric, a whale researcher, was aboard a ship with his team, conducting a study on the whales in the area. Suddenly, Eric heard a strange sound. There were distressing cries coming from Andrew Rocks, a large rocky outcrop. Turning his head towards the rocks, he saw a young orca in trouble, partially out of the water and wedged between sharp rocks. According to Jenny Ray and Herman Mutter, Eric reported the sighting to the local environmental group Whale Point around 7:30 a.m. Eric explained that the orca specialists immediately understood the situation. Orca communities in this area typically gather to hunt seals. Some members of the pod drive the seals toward the shore, while others wait patiently for their prey. This hunting strategy requires coordinated effort and usually succeeds. However, this young female orca stuck in the rocks must have miscalculated her position and entered increasingly shallow waters. Shallow waters pose a significant danger to large marine mammals because they restrict their mobility. She cried out for help from other orcas in her pod, but the water was too shallow for them to reach her. Eric knew Jenny and Herman well, frequently collaborating with them in his research. When he informed them of the young orca's plight, they were returning to their base from Hartley Bay. Jenny and Herman knew there was no time to lose and that they would need all the help they could get. So, as they headed north to join Eric, they contacted the maritime organizations Gitga Emergency Response and Fisheries and Oceans Canada in Hartley Bay, explaining the orca's desperate situation. Meanwhile, Eric and his team approached the orca to see if they could help. Initially, they advanced cautiously to make sure the orca noticed them, but they did not get too close to avoid scaring her and causing her to injure herself in an attempt to escape. Trying to lift or pull the orca from the rocks could have caused serious injuries due to the sharp and jagged rocks. Therefore, they carefully observed the orca's surroundings and assessed the situation. Blood had already started to flow from her chest and tail, further highlighting the seriousness of the situation. The team quickly exchanged ideas to determine the safest and most effective rescue method. Keeping the orca calm was critical for the success of the rescue operation. When Jenny and Herman arrived, Eric followed the instructions they received via satellite phone from John Ford and Paul Cottrell of DFO. They needed to keep the orca cool and wet until the tide rose again. Only then could she be freed. However, it would be 8 hours until the tide came in. The orca might not survive until then. So, the team began a rescue marathon. As people approached, it was clear that the orca was confused and scared. Being stranded on the rocks and surrounded by people could cause her to stress and panic. She was breathing rapidly, and the gravity was evidently causing her great distress. Whales are so heavy that they often suffocate under their own weight when out of the water. Eric and his team used an improvised water pump made from a hose and duct tape to keep the whale from drying out. By keeping the orca's skin moist, they prevented her from drying out and suffering further damage. Additionally, all rescue teams soaked sheets in seawater and carefully draped them over the orca's body, helping to regulate her body temperature. As the rescue teams worked, they noticed that the orca's cries grew quieter and her breathing became calmer, as if she was gaining trust in the humans' efforts. As the rescue operation progressed, the team constantly revised their strategies to best assist the orca, closely monitoring her movements and reactions. The rescue teams took turns pumping seawater over the young orca and replacing the sheets covering her with fresh, cool, water-soaked ones. They could see that the orca's dorsal fin was drying out, so they used a pillowcase from Eric's boat to wet the fin. Fortunately, the weather remained cloudy throughout the morning, but when the sun peaked at noon, the cloud cover lifted and the day's heat began. This weather condition was critical and posed a significant danger to the animal. Everyone tirelessly worked to keep the orca cool and wet, treating her as if she had a fever, replacing dry and warm blankets with cooler, moist ones. The rescue teams couldn't help but think about how dire the young female orca's situation could have been if Eric hadn't noticed her distress calls. Up until this point, they hadn't covered her head to avoid causing her additional stress by taking away her vision. However, the strong sunlight made it inevitable to protect her sensitive skin from the heat and dryness. Jenny described how she watched one of the team members slowly approach the orca's head. carefully placing a wet, cool cloth over her head without blocking her blowhole. The orca's small size was a significant advantage for her. She was estimated to be only about 8 or 9 years old. In the wild, the average lifespan ranges from 30 to 50 years. Initially, the rescue efforts went smoothly, but then unexpected major issues arose. The water pump suddenly broke and there was no way to repair it. This forced the rescue team to change the wet sheets more frequently to avoid endangering the whale's life. However, the people had already been working non-stop for over 7 hours, and their energy was gradually depleting. Despite the fatigue, the team's determination and resolve remained unwavering. Fortunately, just as the pump broke, the seawater began to rise again. This unexpected rise provided a crucial opportunity for the whale to regain access to the water and be rescued. After a total of 8 grueling hours, the tide had risen enough for the rescue teams to start freeing the young whale. They carefully removed the sheets and the pillowcase from her dorsal fin. The team knew it was time to do what they had been waiting for: let the orca swim out of her rocky prison on her own. The team members slowly backed away, not wanting their presence to prompt the whale into premature movement or cause her to injure herself more severely. They climbed onto a nearby rock to observe the situation. They all felt the same thing, hoping that the orca would gather her strength and manage to free herself. It was a moment where everyone took a deep breath and filled with hope. They prayed for the orca to regain her freedom and return to the sea. Had the hours of exhausting effort truly been worth it? The water level gradually rose, covering the young orca's body. As this moment arrived, the orca began to cry out again, but this cry was different. Perhaps it expressed her excitement at the prospect of regaining her freedom. However, the killer whale remained lying there motionless, occasionally lifting her tail but making no effort to swim. Her rescuers began to worry. They wondered if something was wrong. Maybe the whale was more seriously injured than they thought, or too exhausted to make this final big escape attempt. These thoughts grew into increasing concern in the team's minds. However, they decided to remain patient, maintaining their hope despite their worries. They were determined to give her the time she needed to recover and swim to freedom. They all waited, hoping for the orca to eventually regain her strength and make the expected move. The orca tested the depth of the water by moving her tail, and realizing she was safe and wouldn't be harmed, suddenly propelled herself forward with 2 powerful thrusts. She broke free from the rocks and quickly swam into the open sea. The rescue teams cheered from the rocks they were on, shouting, "Well done, girl," to celebrate their success. The young whale had finally managed to swim back to her family, escaping from this challenging ordeal with only a few scrapes. The team felt great joy seeing the whale regain her freedom and disappear into the depths of the sea once more. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to the channel.